Hi there. In this lecture we see an amazing game example of the Bobby Fischer 2-knight system against the Caro-Kann defense. So this is Wesley So against Hrant in 2022, the Olympiad. So in my view this is one of the more beautiful games of the Olympiad in 2022. So the USA team against Armenia, Wesley So playing against Hrant, and it starts with e4, we have c6, knight c3. So after d5 the point is knight f3. This sidesteps a lot of the Caro-Kann opening theory, the two knights variation. So of course we can get to this if knight c3, the very flexible move, c6, wanting a Caro-Kann, we just get to this. And if we still want to try and get an informational advantage, knight f3, the two knights variation. So okay, let's go back to the featured game, bishop g4. Now no one has tested d4 against Fischer. There's a reason. This is quite interesting as well actually. Knight e2, if c5, black has wasted a move here, and we have a very interesting c3 in this position. If knight c6, c takes, there's queen a4, and this is rather dangerous for black. Black has no easy way of protecting d4 and doesn't really want to push this pawn forward. So yeah, this is just getting an advantage like knight takes e5. What does black do? d3, there's knight d4, and yeah, white's going to be picking up the d3 pawn soon. Also interesting here from a theoretical perspective, if d3 straight off the bat, knight c3, d takes, queen takes, this position, d4 is possible, so white gets the classic pawn center. And if black dares to take on f3 to win a pawn, there's a really crushing blow here. Can you spot it? Yeah, for 100 points. There's actually knight d5. This is a really crushing blow, which shows what a dangerous position it is for black. If c takes, queen c8 is checkmate. If e6, knight c7 check, and then taking out a8. If knight a6, we're just taking on a6. If c takes, bishop e3 is crushing. For example here, bishop d2, queen a4 check, and if queen c6, bishop e5, if king d8, bishop a5. So this system has got a lot going for it. This is a kind of virtual trap, in fact, if d4 is played. So yeah, there are some exciting possibilities here. So there are some concrete reasons this was a pet variation of Bobby Fischer. So bishop g4 though is the main move. And white gets the bishop pair, h3, bishop takes f3. Now, Fischer did lose a classic game against Tigran Petrosian, who played in a very energetic manner, castling queenside, locking down the kingside. So if black doesn't play in an energetic manner, you know, sometimes the bishop pair can be very, very handy. We have bishop e2. If d4, this loses some of the tension of the position. D takes e4, queen takes e4, knight f6. This position, there is a small edge, but it's fairly comfortable for black. So bishop e2 is less comfortable for black in a way. So bishop c5, and it looks as though black's got good control over some of these dark squares at the moment. White castles, knight d7, e takes d5, c takes, and this looks very, very respectable and solid, this structure, although white does have that bishop here. Can this bishop here on e2 become a hero in this position? We see rook d1. These next few moves kind of amplify white's central control. So we see first d4, which amplifies control of e5 and c5. And now bishop d3, which amplifies control of e4. And a side square away from the key central squares, the extended center. If we think about the extended center, so e4 and f5. So these are all central moves. And another central move, and the bishop pair looks much nicer here. The snag is this pawn weak? Well, we have a reroute, which is classic, reroute to c6, but knight e2, knight c6, and we have a Carlsbad structure here. So in theory, there's a minority attack. In practice, this is going to be very, very slow to prepare, and even if this happens, there's going to be a3 at some point to slow black down. But given that white also has the bishop pair, the notion of opening up the position is less attractive in general. So this is actually a very solid position where there's a classic Carlsbad plan basically of trying to use the semi-open E file and trying to get some sort of attack. And we see that evolving now. Rook E1, G6, Knight G3. So white has that semi-open E file. The minority attack is a distant dream right now. We see Knight D7. And now a slightly optimistic move, Rook E3 is played. Rook E2 looks more standard, and white could just double the rooks here. You know, Bishop G5 seems like a logical idea from black. If Queen F6, Bishop takes, Queen takes, Knight F1, white should have a small nagging edge here, even without the bishop pair. But yes, black can try and get that bishop pair with Bishop G5 using that battery that's available for that resource. But Rook E3 was played, and now E5, and in fact this is a really interesting position. Bishop H6 is played here, and it looks as though, hold on, is Wesley so just sacrificing a piece speculatively? So this is really interesting. In fact, here, if D takes E5, Bishop C5, there is a fascinating wealth of variations in this position, which kick off from E6. In fact, if Bishop takes E3, we're getting two pieces for a rook, which is an advantage for white. But there's an amazing kind of fantasy variation that exists here, which is F takes E6. If this position, Rook E2, white is looking forward to putting pressure on E6, but isn't there a snag, the F4 bishop? So here, isn't this a snag? And yes, most of the moves absolutely lose for white here in a disastrous manner. For example, Bishop H6, black's just going to take and then threaten Rook takes G3 check. It's just shattering white structure. But the engines disagree with a tactical resource which is out of this world here in this particular variation. Can you see what that is for 200 points? White does have that perk of the doubled rooks, and actually Knight F5 is actually a killer move here, believe it or not. If G takes, Rook takes E6, B4, follow through with this, with Queen takes D5, this position, black's in a world of pain. The light square bishop is basically, you know, fundamentally, the light square bishop is without a counterpart. Black is extremely weak on the light squares in particular, and there's a vacuum of weaknesses around the king. So this is more than enough compensation for sacking a knight. After Queen F3, the big threat is Bishop C4. This position, Bishop C4, and black is without any key defense resources needed. For example, so white's threatening Rook takes C6, among other things, and if Queen G7, Bishop H6, and we're back to that horrible threat, hitting the Queen, taking out C6. If we look at this again, I mean, this is absolutely fascinating stuff with E takes F5, Queen takes D5 check, Queen F7, Bishop C4 is not good. This is not good because it's just equality, this position, but white can actually do better than that. There's a kind of delayed gratification, believe it or not, and this is the most amazing delayed gratification move you'll probably ever see on a chessboard. What does white play here instead of Queen takes D5, which makes things a great deal stronger and different? Instead of Queen takes D5, which is tempting, nice cookie, that pawn, we can actually do a kind of delayed gratification move, B4. And this is just crazy, but it's absolutely winning here. If Bishop E7, Queen takes D5 check, and we have Bishop C4 here, you can see that actually Bishop G5, for example, is crushing. Queen takes F7, Queen G8 is mate. So yes, B4 is absolutely crushing. Another point is, if Bishop B6, we have here a major pin celebration with Queen takes D5 check. So say Queen F7 to protect D7, Queen takes F7 check, and assuming, you know, King takes F7, there's things like B5 for Rook E7 check. So let's assume Rook F7, but Bishop C4, And there's still this idea of b5 to celebrate the pin with rook e7. And it gets very painful after bishop h6. Because what does black actually do in this position? There's a lot of pain on the back row to be dealt with. If, for example, knight f6, rook e7 is absolutely crushing, investing more, and black's totally pinned here. If bishop d8, just again, rook takes b7, celebrating the pin, and now we can just play bishop takes f8, and we're regaining all the material with massive interest. The exchange up. So absolutely fascinating variations here exist after knight f5. However, yeah, this is interesting, but in the game, bishop h6 was played, so it takes away key escape squares. Now here, black should have played the move bishop f8. That would be actually okay, it seems, technically for black. If bishop takes, now e4, this is going to be good for white. There's nothing going on here with either rook takes e4, knight takes e4. White is losing material. It's funny, though, that black didn't play bishop f8, but played e4 immediately. You might think, well, so what? Isn't white having to force, isn't this forcing the issue of sacrificing piece seemingly unsoundly? But a lot of interesting things come to play here. Philosophically, if you have key escape squares of the opponent taking out, sometimes statistically you don't have to kind of listen to the opponent's threats. You can do often quite creative things. And here we see one of the more creative moves of the entire Olympiad, in my view, one of the more stunning moves, even of 2022 so far. So this is an absolute stunner. Guess what white plays here for 500 points? So Carlsbad structure, you're aiming in general for using the semi-open e-file on a kingside attack, but there's a spectacular tactical move here, which is rook takes e4. And the what I would call the diagonal of death is really exposed here. Now black played knight f8, just ignoring it. If d takes e4, can you work out a forced mate in 6 moves here? This is an absolute beauty behind the scenes. Okay, I'm about to reveal, so test your mate in 6 powers. The art of checkmate, indeed. Check my art of checkmate course. This is one for that as well. So queen takes f7 check, brings the king out, bishop c4 check, bringing the king down the board. Knight takes e4 check, king f5. And there's a key move here which further brings down the move. Brings down the king. What move is that? Absolute beauty. Here, there's g4 check, king takes e4, rook e1 check, king f3, and there'll be a choice of checkmate here. Rook e3 is checkmate, what a beauty, or bishop d5 is checkmate. So yes, black avoids that kind of disaster and plays knight f8. And game on. There's pressure now built up against black's king in a really vicious way. It kicks off now with rook f4, that new opportunity, a rook lift, very unusual rook lift on the 4th rank. We see f5, and here, with the confidence fundamentally of the bishop pair, the Lloyd square bishop pair counterpart, guess what Wesley so plays here? So the brilliancy continues throughout this game with this next brilliant move, 200 points. What do you think white plays? Yeah, a knight sack. This is so dangerous for black. We have g takes, rook takes f5. There are numerous threats here. We see queen d6, queen g4 check, knight g6. If queen g6, we can rule that out. Rook takes f8 check, and we're going to be taking the queen. So that's absolutely crushing. So knight g6 is tried. But now, yeah, the brilliancy continues. More investment to really expose the black king. Guess what white plays here for 200 points? Yeah, the problem is, black couldn't play king h8 because of queen g7, it's checkmate. So knight g6. We have here rook takes d5, trying to shred through to the opponent's king. So queen f6. If queen takes d5, we have bishop takes g6. H takes, queen takes, and we've got the classic mate there. But what else? If king h8, we're playing bishop takes e8, gobbling a rook and threatening queen g7, mating. So queen g8 here, we just material up. Thanks very much. You know, this is crushing. So queen f6 is tried. And we just have a calm move now, g3. So white has 7 pawns for a knight. But also the bishop pair, they seem more than adequate here as compensation. Those extra pawns and the bishop pair. We have bishop f8. And now rook f5, queen e7. And that vicious light square bishop without a counterpart plays the check, king h8, and now the other bishop comes in to complement the bishop for a crisscross, well, a double bishop checkmate pattern where you've got 2 bishops on adjacent diagonals is emerging. Black resigned here, or near checkmate is emerging. Black resigned. If queen d6, so this is move 28, queen d6 wasn't played, but if we have queen d6, rook f6, and we're going to get this, you know, there aren't too many moves for the queen. If queen c7, another big tempo gainer, and we have a kind of near, you know, double bishop mate pattern emerging. If king g8, rook e7 is actually showing the power of that light square bishop. That is actually checkmate. Double bishop mate pattern. If queen g7, we just play bishop f6, pinning the queen. If queen c7 is very similar, rook f7, big tempo gain, same kind of thing. So yes, what a spectacular game. If black had played like computer, sure, maybe this is not so solid. If we go back to that key position, rook e3 could have been proved to be a little bit dodgy if, and only if, bishop f8 is played. So this position would have been interesting for black, much more interesting than the game. So yes, a key pawn, yeah, without bishop f8, this is an absolute stunner of a move, one of the more beautiful moves I've seen this year in such a high profile event. So congratulations to Wesley. So I've actually had the pleasure of playing him online, and actually he indicated I was winning at some point. We had a blitz game once, which was very interesting on Lichess. So an amazing player, what an amazing move, iconic move, the most iconic move of the year so far in my view. I hope you enjoyed this game, and it shows that actually Bobby Fischer's 2 knights variation is alive and kicking in major events. Okay, thanks so much.